joining me, guys. We are now live, and we will get started here in just a moment. I'll let some folks trickle in and get settled in, and remind everyone how Zoom webinars work. No one needs a reminder. No one needs a reminder. But we do have chat at the bottom that I need to remember to make sure everyone can chat. I have been known to think you can and find out you can't. Congratulations. Everyone can talk to everyone. Welcome all. We will appreciate any questions as they come up on this topic. There probably will be some great questions from you that I couldn't have anticipated into our deck. So please do not be shy. We will try to answer your questions live. All right. Brandon, Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone settled in? Let's go. Awesome. All right, folks, thanks for joining us. It is actually 1:01. We are going to go ahead and begin this webinar. We title it Autoflow DVI Enhanced with AI, but it isn't just about Autoflow's DVI. This is going to be a conversation on AI in general, more broadly in our industry, what we can expect to see, some of the fears, concerns, and usages that currently exist. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's a fun topic, and I think it can also be an exhausting topic. I want to acknowledge the fact that we know AI is being pumped down our throats in every direction we turn in this age, but it's the age we're in. So we're going to dive into it, and I think it's relevant that I introduce our guest today, even though they really need no introduction to this audience. We'll start with you, Chris. Welcome. Let us know a little bit about your background in case some people are joining us for the first time.
Thank you, Craig, for having me. My name is Chris Cloutier. I am the founder and CEO of Golden Rule Auto Care, two shops in Dallas, Texas, and one software company called AutoTextMe/Autoflow. Glad to be here talking about a subject that is elusive, to say the least, right? AI. Everything is AI now. It's kind of like the cloud. Back when the cloud first started to form, and everybody was like, cloud. And some people actually knew what the cloud was, and some people didn't. And I think to this day, it still rings true that some people actually know what the cloud is, and some people don't. So hopefully we can do a little bit educating as well as having fun and talking about how we're using AI in our product and how people can use it in their daily lives.
Yeah, emphasis on fun. Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Glad you could be here for this topic. I think your background, obviously, in the technology sector is exactly why this is beneficial. I think there's very few people that have that level of knowledge from software and architecture inside of software and all the terms that I don't get to use regularly. But you're also a shop guy too, and that's a rare combination. So this is good.
Frank, let me point out that the developers that we have and the architects that we have do not give me access to the development environment anymore.
Correct.
It's probably a good thing.
Wonderful. Now, another valued member of our team, Brandon, you've joined us before on a number of things. You've been a client long before, former Marine, but always a Marine. True. Brandon Couchet, thanks for joining us. Give us a little on your background, shop owner as well.
Thanks for having me, Craig. Yes, I am also a shop owner. I got medically retired from the Marines in 2013 and moved back to Oklahoma, started a shop in my backyard, grew it to 3 locations, and about a year ago stepped out of the day-to-day. Was bored for a couple of months, and then I reached out to Chris to see if he wanted to pay me to teach people to use his software, because I used to do it for free.
It was a good deal. It was a good deal.
Oh, it was good when he was teaching it for free. It was a really good deal.
No, thanks for joining us.
Those old days.
It was good. Now, Brandon's been on the DVI longer than I've been with Autoflow, and it's been just about 7 years, I want to say now. I'd have to double check that. It's getting hard to keep track. It's been long enough, but predates my time training people as a user of the system. So I feel very fortunate to have Brandon on our team. He has a pragmatic approach to things that, it just helps people understand it really fast. Now, we're going to move in to our poll results. I always like to begin with this because we ask some questions up front. We want to know from our audience how things are going right now with AI. In this particular case, we asked the question, how often your team is currently using AI solutions or a tool enhanced by AI solutions? And it was split. right down the middle in our polled audience on this. All the time is still very low, 16% of you frequently people using it, about 10%. So that's 1/4 of those that responded on this. And then almost a full quarter itself was just occasional, which is pretty good. Until we realize that really half of you either aren't tracking it or paying attention to it is what I consider unsure. Some of you are never touching it, at least maybe to your knowledge. I'm sure there's some areas where you potentially might. And then some people just rare use for it. And I think that's a good sample of where we're at right now. Brandon,
It's
Chris?
a great sample.
Yeah.
I go back to cloud. A lot of people, it depends on your background, Craig. Once again, I was a techie guy when I grew up. Spent a lot of time with computers and programming and development and architecture and different systems. And if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't, right? If you're not a techie person, you trust a lot of what you may or may not know coming from somebody else. So, Google, so I think a lot of people probably think, oh, if I use ChatGPT, I'm using AI, which a lot of the tools you're using now probably have some variable or variance of some sort of artificial intelligence actively involved in some of the things right now. So I think over time, and some people will care and some people really won't care. But I think it's interesting if we could redefine this. Is it, are you going to ChatGPT? I'm sure your numbers would probably line up along like this.
Absolutely. Brandon, you and I were talking beforehand too, and you brought something up that I hadn't considered when I made the poll question, but a lot of people still have different interpretations of what AI actually means.
Absolutely. And Chris just said it. It stands for artificial intelligence, but I have definitely been on a fair number of training calls where it's been referred to other things. And I wish I could recall some of those right now, but for whatever reason, my brain's not working. So I need some AI to help me with that.
Yeah. I hear automated as a miscommunication for the A in many cases, automated information. And it's not a far, it's not a big miss. It's a near miss, I would say. But yeah, this is I always draw emphasis because the A does stand for artificial, and I'm one of those people, guys. I'll be perfectly clear that would have answered the next question a little bit more in the affirmative than I had. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the question after this, but we'll get to the concerns. I have some concerns. We did ask how people are using it, though. We asked that in a short response field, and the responses, interestingly, were quite uniform. And not surprising, one of the most ubiquitous, most common ones that we see in the world today, and Chris has already mentioned it too, ChatGPT. It is undoubtedly from OpenAI. This is that interface where you can go type it questions. I've played with it. You can ask it to help you solve algebra equations, and it's a much better teacher for my kids than I am. Lots of things on there. And people in shops, very specifically, are using it for review responses a great deal. I thought that's pretty interesting. Wanting to really get the right sort of, at least politically correct, right response to a certain type of review. And it's amazing that these things can do so, and they do them pretty well. Are these in alignment with what you guys are seeing as well? Brandon, I know you've talked to some people on some of these things and have some opinions here too.
Definitely. And I use the Grammarly version of it quite a lot in emails because it makes me sound smarter.
Sure. Yeah, Grammarly's great. Yeah, it corrects some of the things that we're typing out as you are typing it, which makes us super critical of how we type.
But then you can also click a button that says rephrase with AI.
I haven't done that.
I believe, and this goes back to the question earlier, the unsure. If you're using Google or right now, right? And most people don't probably recognize it because we've kind of been trained to not look at the top couple of things that Google presents because they're probably an ad. You go search on Google right now, and there's a high probability that it's going to give you some sort of AI summary top, depending on the question. So once again, it's already seeped into probably a lot of things that you're unaware of or just not really paying attention to. It's intentionality, right? I think once again, the question you asked was, are you intentionally going out and seeking to go use ChatGPT or Grammarly? Great example, Brandon.
Yeah.
Or are you going to search on Google and just not paying attention that it's giving you an AI summary right there? Or your emails or your meetings are giving you summaries, or Microsoft Office, right? Blah, blah, blah. Lots of different now avenues that are starting to summarize and start to give us pieces and parts. So reframing the question and make it more specific, maybe we get different answers. But yeah, you see it popping up once again, search. I mean, it is the quintessential new holy grail for software companies to have AI somewhere in their product base.
You can't be a company that does software and not do something with AI today.
Got to have in your something.
Yeah, I saw a funny one too that you'll appreciate is like, are you even a CEO of a software company if you aren't mentioning AI?
So that goes back to your initial point, which was, yeah, it's a word that's kind of getting abused and used, much like cloud-based software when it first started, right? Like nobody really knew. And to Brandon, your point earlier when you were talking about that, like, yeah, here I am. I went from, on-prem type software and server farms and all this to this cloud idea. First, it was like, mirroring and all this, and then there was, some different types of ways to increase your footprint. And then when the cloud truly came out, right, the definition of what was running in the cloud versus just server running somewhere in the cloud, like a lot of nuance to it, and how it was actually being used. I heard it misused all the time. Still hear cloud being misused to this day.
Yeah. What's interesting to me about this, and it fit, I had the theory, I didn't want to project it into our poll questions at all, but I had a suspicion that almost all of the responses would have some form of chat GPT type rephrasing use. And if you look at these responses, and this is a summary of all the responses here, and some of them in order of weight, by the way, all of them involve some form of communication, and specific our typed form of communication. And that's when we start talking about Autoflow and what we're doing within the DVI. The first thing people started thinking, oh, are you going to start summarizing our technician notes for us? Like, I mean, I guess that could be a low-hanging fruit if we decided to integrate with someone else's model. But that's where this conversation is going to go a little bit different, because I actually do consider that low-hanging fruit in terms of AI usage right now. And there was one reply in here that did say data mining inside of their response. Just one. Now, let's go into the part that I'm most interested in, and that is the concerns. And there are a number of concerns. This is what I think is important here. Lack of control or privacy was top cited in terms of your concerns on AI. Lack of control or privacy, and that is spot on. With some of my concerns. I think that there's a lot of things you go play in ChatGPT, and it's free for a reason. That's training something. And that's important to understand about some of these tools that are out there for you. Every time you do a search on Google, Microsoft, Bing, Amazon, Siri, does not matter which one it is. You are teaching them something, not just about what people in general are looking for, but sometimes you specifically. Very interesting how this is evolving. Then we have some general responses too. Some yups. Some yeses, some sums, and of course, one Skynet reference.
What was the old saying when Facebook and those platforms came out? If you're not paying for the product, then you are the product.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And just think, not so long ago, we were actually concerned that computers as a whole were just doing all of this, creating the privacy concerns, and we're now putting how much data out there that can be hacked and telling people all about us. And now we all carry miniature computers that listen to us and tell us what we should buy on Amazon.
Yeah. If you want to have something pop up sooner, just verbally say you're interested in something, and good chance you'll find it on your next scroll through a feed.
I actually have done that before.
I like the lack of control of privacy, right? And the concern is, I think, and it's valid. Me being a musician, and I used to write my own music, and we used to go perform. From a creative standpoint of being a musician or artist, right? I could really see where, and this is where it kind of gets out of control, right? When it comes to code, people are like, do you copyright your code? You can. It's very hard to copyright idea when it comes to software, because if you think about it, there was Friendster, and then after Friendster, there was MySpace, and after MySpace, there was Facebook, and after Facebook, there was TikTok, and then Instagram, and all those variations. They're all the same thing. They're just a little bit variance in each one in the way that they implement it, but they're basically the same type concept, just tweaked, right? So you would think, okay, once the first person came out with a social platform, they'd be able to take. Well, they can't, right? So software is kind of one of these places that it's hard to really copyright and really create that type of privacy type. When it comes to businesses, what I feel bad for is really artists. Your wife being an artist, and other musicians who make a living off of it. You go basically go train your model, take all this data, and then you basically create art and things that the artist isn't getting credit for, right? And certain people are getting credit for. So I think that becomes a huge concern with AI today, and it's going to be AI tomorrow, right? Because you don't know what data is training the model and how they got a hold of that data, because they not disclose it to you. These companies are not telling you where they're getting this data from.
No.
And there's no act right now that forces them to tell you where this data is coming from.
There is not.
Right? There's no transparency.
Yeah, my wife was just telling me about artists are actively right now removing any of their product that's on Instagram or Facebook and some of those other applications, and they're moving to one that's supposedly safer called Kara, and that's a place where it won't be used to.
Yeah, but what's to say somebody doesn't take a picture? I mean, it's
how's it
too
work?
easy
We don't know.
it's too easy to go.
Cat's out of the box
and train. It's out of the box.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting. Oh, I hate to say we need more laws, and the government has. I'm going to say this: they have no idea what they're doing now, nor will they have any idea what they're doing in the future until maybe AI tells them, "Hey, you should do this." But how much is AI going to protect itself from itself?
Well, this is where
there are some good actors now trying to.
There is. This is where the A in AI, artificial, is my main concern, period. Because the identifying what is AI and what is human is already difficult and impossible in some cases. If you think about the TikTok element, where now there's literally AI personas that are full, like they look like real humans spouting information. And that's a concern. And you know what's really weird is people have been using AI to alter their own image for long enough now that they have all these filters that make them look fake anyways, that we're already conditioned to real people looking fake before this stuff happened, and that this is breaking digital trust at all layers. So images could be AI generated now. Chat could be AI generated now, and it is going to be convincing. And I think if we aren't careful, we can see DVIs, for example, lose some integrity rather than be that piece that's demonstrating our integrity. And that's a concern. And this is the world we're entering. So I think the concerns that people have them is spot on. I was a little bit disappointed to see almost half the recipients had no concerns. And great, but not so great. I know that it can be sensationalized, but I think it is a legitimate thing that we have to get real smart on real quick. And so here's where we're going to go. We want to talk about what Autoflow is doing. We want to talk about the aftermarket a little bit and how AI is actually coming into the aftermarket. There will be lots of different ways this is going to be happening. There is already a number of organizations that are rushing into this. I've seen some pretty common examples of it, and it's like a joke now too. And we've had this internal chat before here at Autoflow. Oh, so-and-so has come out with something new with AI. What do you want to bet? It's a chatbot. Oh, look, it's a chatbot. And it's some other form of it. Shoot. I mean, we don't even advertise it in our email builder thing. You can have AI assist inside of that stuff. That's like basic level stuff at this point now, that almost anything that allows you to enter something into a text field, it's assumed almost that you can have AI stretch or expand or do something with that. And that'll probably become more ubiquitous like other things. But, and Chris, I think you made a great point on this. When we were talking, very few organizations will be actively building, managing, and maintaining their own models. What is data modeling?
This goes back to years ago, right? People started talking about big data. Big data became a hot topic subject that has kind of dissipated, but it hasn't, right? It is still as hot as it was before, and it's going to continue to get hotter, right? Because data modeling has to do with the data that you have, right? It has to do with building kind of the intelligence and understanding. Now, there's a couple different facets, and this is where I can't geek out and talk about the different types of engines and different types of things that run. But basically, the essence of a data model is in this, what they always talk about, training the model. What does it mean to train the model? The best example I like to give of this is cat versus dog, right? And take a human child right? And how do you tell a human child? Let's say Brandon is 7 years old, 8 years old, because he still looks 7, 8. And we're trying to teach Brandon the difference between cat and dog, right? We're going to give Brandon lots of pictures of dog and pictures of not dog, cat. And we're going to say, and then once we train him, like, hey, Brandon, this is a dog. Like, they have pointy ears, they have tail, right? Every once in a while, he's going to point at a cat or a raccoon. And he's going to go, dog. And we're going to go, no, Brandon, not dog. Raccoon. No, it's not, right? It's dog. This is dog. That's this. So you not only have to train a model with positive reinforcement of this data that you're trying to tell it what it is, you also have to train it with negative data and say, this is what it isn't, right? Now, once Brandon grows older, as he's seen the difference between dog and cat over and over and over again, right? Eventually, he can see the butt end of a dog. He doesn't have to see the full dog to know that it's a dog. He could see the head and know that it's a dog. He could see a leg and make an assumption that it's a dog. And his probability of it being a dog would be very high because he's now seen, let's say, hundreds of millions of repetition of dog, different types of dog, what is a dog and what isn't a dog. So he's trained himself, his brain, to know what this object now is versus what it isn't, right? And it's all about this probability, because sometimes when you see what you think is a dog and it's dark outside and you only see the butt end of it, it's actually a coyote, right? Which I don't think coyotes are dogs.
Very closely related, cousins maybe.
I think they're closely related, but it's not, right? But your brain will go, oh, it is, right? You're gonna, because it's based off of probability of what your brain knows, and that's data modeling, right? We got to train it, what it is, what it is. Every once in a while, and this is where the fallibility, and we're going to talk about this, right? How your models can be twisted and how they can be, and everybody back in the day used to talk about good data in, good data out, right? Well, yeah, it's crucial that your data that you're getting is good data, right? That you're training your model based off of good data, because, and we're talking millions, hundreds of millions, trillions times trillions of points of data to train something. So when somebody tries to trick it, it goes, no, you can't change my probability by just telling me 10 times this dog is a cat or this cat is a dog, right? Because you only told me 10 times, and I've been trained a trillion times that this is dog, right? And this doesn't fit my definition, right? So the training becomes important because you need so much reinforcement of the positive and a whole bunch of reinforcement of the negative to make sure that this model is solid, right? So depending on how much data is in your model, can depend on how easily your model is persuaded to be wrong, right? And then you've got an engine behind that making decisions based off all this. It's just like a brain, right? That's why it's called artificial intelligence. It's what we do, right? When we're thinking about, decision making, or how we're going to write our email, or how we're going to phrase this one thing, right? We're going through the same process of going back through our data bank and realizing, hey, I'm going to send an email to Craig. Is it going to be a friendly email? Yeah, I like Craig right now, so it's going to be friendly. So you might reread your email multiple times, turning through it, making sure it's right? And making sure that all the years and years of data that you put in your head are going to come up and formulate this right piece of information this way.
Yeah, no, I think it's a simple example that we can relate to, especially 8-year-old Brandon.
Definitely.
Did that make sense?
A little bit. I lost him when he started talking about cats. I started following him.
Well, here's the thing. There are issues with
squirrels.
Oh.
There are issues with data models, and we wanted to break this down in real simple terms. So we broke it down into just three issues. And there's a new term that has come up recently that I think is really relevant to this conversation. And that term, and this is recent, I've only started to see this term in the last couple of weeks, the term slop, AI slop. And I think it helps to understand what that is. There's two forms of this I've seen. And Chris, I know you've seen the hallucination term already before, but slop is basically a wrong or unintended result that you're getting from AI. Anything that's I guess incorrect or inaccurate or unintentional, something surprising or something blatantly and completely wrong. And
for instance, the way you keep your condiments on a pizza or your
Yes.
meats on a pizza is use glue, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay,
That was an actual case from Google's AI. Yes. Yeah.
it is a good suggestion, but I do not know that glue is a topping on pizza that I would like to eat at this moment. Solves the problem,
Yeah, it does solve the problem, but
but not delicious anymore.
Yeah, yeah, no, but that's a great example too. And I think also a rather catastrophic one for publicity reasons for Google's AI. And this doesn't mean like OpenAI is perfect with ChatGPT or Microsoft's Copilot or whatever. When we're talking about, they're all capable of doing something ridiculous. Shoot, even TikTok wasn't supposed to have the ability with their little AI videos, but one of the reporters and journalists who had access to an early model of it was able to get it to start spitting out some stuff from Mein Kampf, and the AI individual was basically just spouting Hitler type phrases, and as though that's something you needed to know in a convincing, nice looking video of a modern day person talking about these things so matter of factly. Whoops, not something we really need. I don't even know if that's a good case of slop or something else, because that's just how it is. But what contributes to it in the aftermarket is what's interesting to us. And the aftermarket, in particular, I think you're going to get a lot of contributions to slop because of, well, very specifically, it'll be problem number 2 here in a second, but we're not very good at standardizing data to begin with. It's already sloppy.
As we have seen in our building of AI data modeling, 476,000 different ways to write a brake flush.
Yes. Yeah. Literally actual.
So to give an example of this, I actually pulled up real quick, just oil change, right? And here's what we call it, right? And this is us aggregating data to find out what is an oil change, right? The oil change is what we call it, right? There's also oil change reminder, oil change indicator light. We call it engine oil. We call it engine oil change. We call it engine oil level condition. We call it lube change oil filter. We call it LOF. We call it lube oil filter. We call it synthetic lube oil. We call it synthetic LOF, right? So here's just this oil change, but no, it's not. It's not an oil change, right? And this is just quick. There's a whole bunch of them. I didn't want to go through all of them. Like, that's one example of how. And this is coming from all the inspections, digital inspections that people have created over the years in Autoflow, and we've aggregated them down to try and find a common, hey, what is this thing? Because this is going to lead up to what we're going to discuss. But here's just an example of, let's not call it slop. Let's just call it a lack of standardization in our industry, and which I know you're going to get to in a minute. So I don't mean to kill your buzz.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I knew this would happen on this point because it's all interconnected. And problem number 2 is very specifically this. So I think that this just builds on the slop issue because, again, we have created for ourselves an inconsistency in the language that we use to describe even the most basic things. I think that it's worth pointing out AI will help this. I think that's why we see people using it in reviews. I think that's also a dark side of AI because eventually it is going to become so standardized in some responses that it's going to sound more robotic over time. But this is something that we really can't solve for people. We can't, and Autoflow certainly can't just go and change the language that everyone's using. And we don't automatically get good language from our other partners. They're going to have their own ways of doing things. They're going to have their own methods for doing things. So as we get ready to show you what we do inside of our DVI now, which involves understanding repair history, you have to take into consideration that we have to try to teach this thing something from thousands of different responses that y'all think are the best ones. Every single one of you. This is the best way to do it.
So, Craig, are you saying we have to train this and teach it like it's our customers? Because I feel like that's what you're talking about right now.
Yes.
Anybody who's been a technician or a service writer totally knows that an oil change is not just an oil change, but your customer thinks it is. So that's why the Walmart oil change is the exact same thing as what you're giving them. The price difference is all that is different.
Yeah. But imagine with if you just take the data that we've seen and you put it all into the AI model and said, all right, here you go, world, AI model complete. You have not solved anything whatsoever. It's a big
Everything's an
ugly
oil
mess.
change.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure every time a job's in at the shop, it needs one.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that I think is very valid that you're bringing up, Craig and Brandon, which is like ChatGPT is cool to go write something, but reread what it just wrote. Like, don't. I
Please.
think the fear is like if we start allowing this thing just to be us without any type of oversight, like literally sometimes you're letting an 8-year-old child, and not Brandon's not an 8-year-old child, but literally it could be an 8-year-old child that you're allowing to make these decisions because of the maturity of this model that you're relying upon. So therefore, like you said, like it's like it's great. Make sure you're oversight. So don't fear it. Don't steer away from it. Steer into it and make sure you're using the oversight with it and your understanding, and you're just not blindly trusting it. Right. And as business owners, a lot of times I think that's one of our fallible, we're told, trust your people, trust systems, trust things. Yeah, to some degree, but trust but verify, right?
Perfect.
Is that
perfect? Term. Perfect segue to problem number 3, which is the human engagement with these models that exist, which are still coming into existence. But I really believe that the chat bots came first for a very clear reason. It's more fun. We know exactly what to do with a little chat window and get a response from. I tell it something, it spits something out. This is easy. And the response is sometimes surprisingly excellent. The data that an AI model can synthesize and aggregate for us is so fast. It can process information much quicker than we can. But what other data, like other than asking it to spit back something that we had to prompt it for, what else could it do? And I think that's the question that what bothers me when people say we have a new AI solution and it never is anything other than a chat bot rephrasing the very things that we wrote. It's a little bit lackluster now. So this is where we are.
How often do we as business owners tell, like Chris said, trust but verify, inspect what you expect, all the different little things, and then we want to adopt something like this AI in our own lives. We expect something out of the people who work with and for us, but yet when we go in and we see this, oh, this is going to make my life easier, so now I'm just going to trust it. And then all of a sudden you didn't reread what you just wrote on somebody's their promotion, their discipline, whatever you may be giving someone. You just typed in a couple sentences and got 5 paragraphs of what ChatGPT said it should be, and maybe it's not right.
New York got in trouble, and this is months ago, and there's stories everywhere you can find this, but New York created a chatbot for businesses and basically to give business advice, and it started giving really bad advice and like don't pay taxes type advice. And of course the mayor is like, well, no, it's not our fault, like that we developed this thing that we hung off our website that is answering your questions that we told you to, like, yeah, it's like, that's insane, right? But that's to Brandon's point, like it's easy, right? I mean, and it's easy as business owners, we get busy and we're like, let's let it go, so yeah, I mean, to what point do you trust but verify?
Well, that's a good point.
There's different types of, there's different types of programs, there's different types of things, like Grammarly, probably, you guys probably could trust to some degree. I don't use it, I don't need it. It's a joke. I need it probably worse than anybody. Like there's probably a lot of trust. Grammarly's probably not going and rewriting your whole thing, I'm assuming, right? And you're skimming over it enough to know that it's just correcting things and it's not, so there's probably a lot more trust that you built up with that product because it's been around for a long time. They've got a lot of good data models to model exactly
its comma placement is so good.
There you go. It knows how to, I wouldn't even know if it was bad, right? Like most people wouldn't know if the comma placement was good or bad. They would be like, wow, that's awesome. Like I would have no idea. I don't use commas.
Yeah. But hey, Patrick chatted us here on the panel, and he said oversight, 100%. They're using an app for tech notes, and it does them so well that there's rarely an issue. And I think what Brandon was hitting at too, I think this is kind of the point. It lulls us into this point where, all right, we can relax our oversight a little bit, and it's good that you're not. Yeah, yes, Peter, Oxford comma is real. But no, the oversight has to remain. As they become more trustworthy, there will become less oversight. Once there's not enough oversight, more slop and more errors come in that no one recognizes to maintain, manage, or correct. And so you've got to know who is managing the model that you're using. Because I bet you New York, once they're telling people that it's not taxes, not to pay taxes, it's like, well, it's not our model. Like you said, they just hung it on their website. Cool stuff.
Brings up a couple words that you don't hear too often anymore. Vigilance and complacency. In the Marines, you had to remain extremely vigilant while you were in a combat zone, because if you became complacent, many times that resulted in not something great happening to you.
Yeah, probably some painful lessons. Very good point.
And Craig, I think to the point where, once again, like, okay, I do, we've talked about this in prior webinars. I do a birth to death ticket audit, right? Take it from the time the customer walks in until the time the customer walks out. We look at everything. Was all the vehicle written up? Was the reason why vehicle here was descriptive? What was sold, what wasn't sold? Like, there's a big spreadsheet, right? That takes all these check marks. Did this happen? What is the percentage of this? What is the percentage of this? I don't do that on every ticket, and I haven't done it on every ticket for a long time. Now, if I start seeing a pattern, we'll go do it on every ticket. But I get enough of a sample set where I'm still trusting, but I'm verifying, right? I'm taking a sample set and typically find some sort of patterns a lot of times in that. So yeah, even if we're allowing it to write some of stuff, every once in a while we should pay attention to what it's writing and just spot check and say, hey, we don't do free AC jobs. Like, I don't know where it came up with that, but once again, depending on, you don't know what ChatGPT is going to say next week. There's been a couple examples where ChatGPT has just gone off the rails, right? And they're having to retrain the model and very quickly fix it, right? And it's happened with ChatGPT. It's happened with, Google's. It's happened with all of them, right? It's just going to happen.
Absolutely. No, so phase one, this is where we're at right now. We are at this point where we are looking at, human eyes are looking at the way we're doing this. So I think it's helpful for people to understand the model that we are creating, that Autoflow is creating with our own keys. This is our own proprietary utility. We're not taking someone else's AI model to do it. Yes. Yep. Now, what it's using is line item titles and job titles. We combine those things and to help them be understood in those keys. Now, y'all have some pretty crazy DVI line items sometimes. You don't all use DVIs the same. And mind you, these are just used in your own individual shops. Once this is turned on, we only have a few users that are actively training this with us right now, but job titles as well. Within a single store, you use a lot of different job titles for your own things, and that's fine. What we have to do is we have to make sure we're monitoring the fact that our keys are connecting those two things that you use for you are accurate. And that's where, in particular, Brandon and I have had a lot of fun looking at this and actually training some of the worst examples out of it and some better examples in, and saying, oh, this is actually synonymous with this and the other thing. But I think it's helpful to take a look at what it actually looks like as an end result. So I'm going to pull over to the screen here an actual DVI. This is actually an active ticket in Chris's shop today. Chris's shop, naturally one of the early adopters of the AI tagging is what we're calling it right now. And what you're going to notice is,
and let me just go and talk about, and you can stay on the screen, so you don't have to go back, because it's conceptualized, right? So the problem that we're trying to solve, right, is the fact that I already said, for lube oil filter or oil change, there's 100 different ways to describe this digital vehicle inspection thing. That's one thing, right? And we've described it hundreds of, hundreds of ways. Some are just absolutely like, well, that doesn't even make sense. hundreds of thousands. Let's just say hundreds of thousands, because I don't know the actual counts. Then on this side, we've got history, right? And as auto repair shop owner service advisors and technicians, we understand that history might not say lube oil filter as the package, right? It might just say, it actually might say oil change. And over here, you might say LOF. And over here under the package, it might not be package. It just might be a oil filter and some labor and some oil, right? So this stuff never matches up, right? It hadn't matched. It doesn't match because we created all these different things in history, thousands of different ways of doing this thing we call oil change. Let's just call it oil change for the sake of this conversation, right? And then all these different ways to look at oil change. So yeah, this example, what we're trying to do is solve this huge discrepancy between these two things, right? And say, and it's not, and people are like, well, that's just matching data. Oh, it's not. We're training a model to understand thing and have the intelligence to be able to without us having to say, oh, is it this thing? Because it's like, yeah, like you and Brandon have to do. It's like, oh, it's, hey, these things are good too. And you're like, no, those are not good things, right? Like, no, those could be. And it's funny, Gerald Martin's one of the guys that's helping us, right? And Gerald, I think, very much gets the concept. I'm assuming he's on this, but he gets the concept, right? And some of the results we get, and Jared's he's been great, right? Like, yeah, it kind of picked up this thing that's really not, it's making a stretch to make that relationship thing. So yes, and this is why we haven't opened up, but we're going to continue to open up to everybody, right, as we move forward. But like, once again, we're training, a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old. It'll only get more mature over time as we feed it more data, as we get more input, as we tell it no and yes. It will only get better, right? And I dare to say that it's 8 years old. It might be a 12-year-old kid. I don't know in age how old this model is, right?
Let me put into context for people what they're looking at here, because it's relevant to what you're saying. The line item inside of this DVI, you can actually see that we're basic. When I help people understand what we're doing here, by explaining that we're smacking your technician in the face with the history that exists for the vehicle, rather than having to go search for repair history right now. It's going to show up on any inspection sheet that you're performing, even if this had a different inspection. Before, we always were tied to the same sheet, same line item, to show you if that specific line item has any history in it. That doesn't help the technician understand the past on that. So we started with a very easy one with oil changes. You see how it's last serviced on this date at this mileage, and we can see all the other oil changes that occur with this particular client at that interval and which ones have been done, even if it's said a little bit differently in the past. And it's simple. It looks really simple, but think about how this had to be done in the past. Job codes, mapping, string matching was another method of doing that. You had to be very deliberate and constantly use the same language all the time. You could achieve something very much like this, but this does not depend on that anymore. This is the actual system we're actually forcing it to understand the correlation on these things so that it can replicate this, even if there is subtle variances later on across multiple inspection sheets. And what it's doing, if we scroll through this DVI, you'll start to see several line items have this on there. Several won't, and that's also by design. We'll cover that in a moment. But understanding when a cabin air filter is replaced and tying that to line items. Some things are one-to-one. I love it. But it's cabin air filter, and you wouldn't believe the training that goes into the term air filter and engine air filter.
We talked about this, right? We as an industry, and Craig, or Brandon, I don't know if you were, but me and Craig talked about, like, if we would have called it like engine air filter versus air filter, like everything, like air filter, yeah, it needs an air filter. Well, is it cabin air? Is it engine air? Like, it's just that simple use of the fact that we've dropped the very important descriptor of what the air filter is. Like, it gets very confusing.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you ever have an opportunity to train a model with someone and you want to work in the same Google sheet as them while removing things that maybe shouldn't be there anymore, don't have one person at the top and one at the bottom, because lines start disappearing and the wrong lines tend to disappear. I only heard about that. I never experienced it.
Well, we got it done. But no, when you have to remove things, that's one thing. But here's the thing: you're starting to see the history right here. Now, this, folks, is phase one of what we want to accomplish. By doing it this way, we have a safe way, because this is just presenting information to you, the professionals, for you to use to make better recommendations in your conversations that you're having authentically. That's a great foundation for what we want to do in the future. There's lots of more applications that we can imagine, understanding the correlation between a DVI item and a job, for tracking approvals more effectively inside of the DVI, and a lot of other things that come with this. This is just the beginning, but it is a necessary beginning. And sometimes, and I think that as we show this, and there's a buildup to even just demonstrating this for you here today, because I wanted you to have the context of the realm that we are working in before showing you what it looks like in the realm you're already working in. And it seems simple. Okay, cool. You're connecting jobs to line item. And it should seem simple because this is now happening for you. In the past, you would have had to go up into your shop management system history, search for a job, and see what you see about brakes. And that's great. We can see a lot of details on when brakes were done very quickly and very easily. But what do technicians not do? Stop what they're doing. Search.
They don't. And I run good shops. I do, but you get busy. And that's the four-letter word that every shop owner, and Brandon, you know this, right? Like, all wheels fall off. Now, guys stick to the process, still stick to the basics of process, but a lot of things unfortunately get ignored. And no shop likes it when you recommend something and the person says, "We just did that."
No. It's pretty destructive. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you've just burned whatever level of trust that you've started to create with a customer. You've just very quickly, in one statement, which tore that down.
Chris, you built this into the product long before I worked here. Just in our DVI alone, of the capability to repopulate the red and yellow items. And it was something that I absolutely loved as a shop owner running a shop every day. What I hated was that my technicians and or service writers wouldn't take the time to go ahead and delete that line that said repopulated from previous inspection. They would just leave it and send it to the customer. I'm like, come on, guys. It's there to help you, but not take over for you. Another trust but verify.
Yes, it's not yes, the things that AI should be doing for us, and my artist wife will tell you this too, is that, and there's a good meme on this in the world today. It had well, how did it go? It went, I don't want AI to be doing the creation and the creativity stuff for me so that I can do the laundry and dishes. I want it to do the laundry and dishes so that I can do the creating. And that's a much better outlook for it. This is the first step for taking some things off your shoulders and presenting it more effectively. From that point, we can start doing some.
Craig, if you would go back to the thing and go on breaks, and I want to point this, and I think it's
on,
fair
on the DVI, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So let's play with this. I'm glad you want to go here.
And Gerald Martin, he because once again, he's one of the ones that's also doing this. Like, click on some of the things that are coming up in breaks, right? And you'll see, like, this is still association that our model saying, hey, yeah, this caliper front end, hey, like, yes, there's distinctions that we still have to make because it's, and so we could get super granular with this, or we could stay broad with it, and we're going to work with shops to kind of try and find the balance. Because is it good that you did a courtesy brake inspection when you're looking at any brake components? Do you want to know that we did a courtesy brake check? Do you want to know? So there's things that may kind of, people might think, well, why is this showing up?
Yeah, the rear brake pads, for example. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Rear brake pads. Is this wrong? Because we are showing these results for this. The question, and I'll ask this to the audience, please reply in chat. Would you want to know the repair history for this line item, even though we did something on the front, if you're looking at the rear? Yeah. Peter,
my opinion as a technician is absolutely yes. And we had this conversation, Craig. I'd rather click on that and open it up and have a real view of what actually happened than to just take an educated guess or have to scroll up to the history, type in brakes, see that we had a front brake job on there previously. We talk constantly in the software world about the number of clicks to do things. How many clicks have we reduced by adding these lines? on for technicians. I think we've just essentially made them incredibly more efficient, even though some of the data is going to be overkill.
Yes. Yeah, because, and I love the responses. It seems overwhelmingly yes from several of you. And Brandon and I had this conversation between the two of us. And so my diagnostic background is probably not as deep as Brandon's, but in the transmission shop, rebuilding, doing R&R work on transmissions, a lot of experience as a technician and a service advisor. I'm thinking about the process very much from the bay and at the counter, and Brandon's capable of doing both things. And that's mutually where we came to the conclusion of, and this is where our human oversight, fortunately, has the experience in the industry to make these judgment calls, comes into handy. This is not what happens with AI at all in other models, right? And you see it right here, caliper, front, rear. That doesn't even make sense. Rear brake pads. Well, if we're teaching it that it's the front, not the rear, it could be correct and it could leave this out. And maybe you're doing a different inspection sheet. Who knows what the ramifications could be by omitting data we didn't think was relevant. We want to err on the side of a little too much. And I think that that's responsible.
Yeah. And Peter, great. It's again. Like, we don't want it to become overwhelming. Like, that's the problem with history. You went back up to the history and there's 18,000 lines of history. Yeah, you can do a search on the history, but it's still, like, to Brandon's point again, that's clicks. We don't want it to be overwhelming, but it certainly does help when you want a quick view of, oh man, we just did the front brakes. It is diagnostic information. I think to Peter's point, like, okay, this could be valid when you're making this new recommendation, or even looking at the problem that it came in. If you know the front brakes were just done, hey, I need to go look at the rears if there's a grinding noise, or maybe let me look at, I don't know.
I love this because this is such a good example. I didn't even plan this for the webinar, and I didn't really even think about it too much until we're sitting here discussing it. But yeah, this case, what would have happened if we're searching repairs? It only went back to the invoice from 2022. And so, yeah, we did that back in 2022. But we didn't go back just a little further and say, also in 2022, just a few months before that, we had done brakes twice. What was the issue? And that should prompt further investigation into a scenario like this. So there's lots of benefit to having it summarized, history summarized for you. Pretty cool.
Yeah, Chris, I thought you ran good shops. You're doing front brake pads every 7,000 miles.
That was in 2022. That was during COVID times, right? Things were different then. I'm just kidding. No, I'm sure if we looked at it, right, there was either bad part misinstalled, there was a squeal, there was something that was done that we didn't.
Correct.
So and to Craig's point, okay, at least it's here. We can go back to the history and go see what the notes were, the RVH, why it came in. Like, we can go research that stuff, but hey, it's pretty cool that from a quick summary we can see these things very quickly.
Yeah. And so here's where we're at, folks. And this is going to become available. You'll start to see this in the very near future. I don't have an exact date, but in the near future, this will be turned on. It's using the data for your shop only. And
if you're in the webinar now, you want to hit us up, we can turn it on for you. Just have some patience. We're not globally turning it off everybody right now. That will be a little bit of time. But yeah, anybody at the webinar can certainly have access to this.
And we've only done this where the top 30 is our focus right now. The most common things that are marked wrong on DVIs. That's information that we have, and Brandon and I have audited. And like, these are the most common things from our courtesy inspections in our past. And that's where we focused on just those items. And I feel like that's going to cover 80% of what people need to see in a typical courtesy inspection. Does it mean that the other items aren't going to come? Well, no, it just means that's the other 20% are going to take 80% of our time. So it's there's a nice little 80-20 reference there for you. It's a lot of work for the granular stuff that follows. It's easier work to focus on this batch of first 30. And I see you, Stephen, and in chat, please hit us there. And also, folks, as we wrap up too, we'll show our emails here, and you can email us as well if you're watching the recording on this and you want to reach out to us. In fact, I'll go to that slide right now.
I also put support's email in there.
Oh, no. Yeah, here you go, buddy. Yep. Now, reach out to me or Brandon first, as we're responsible on this project very specifically. But we appreciate our early adopters' feedback. That's a key piece on this as well. And we're going to continue to need that. Brandon and I are only two eyes, and folks, hundreds of thousands of inspections every month. We can't look at them all.
We have lots of data we've collected over the years. Lots of data.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to be very clear on that too. The data that Autoflow uses has always been and always will be used very responsibly for you, for your shops. It is not, for example, like the AI keys that we use. Let's go back to this picture here. Like we understand the correlation between multiple shops on this, but we're helping it to understand your jobs to your line items. And the way it functions is very, very specific to you. We have the keys in the middle. And you can trust us holding those keys. Is what I really hope to convey more than anything else. We don't want anyone else to have keys to anyone else's data. That is our client. That's very deliberate as well.
We are responsible for that oversight.
Yes.
And my job just got harder.
Well, you know what? It's a group process here because everyone's responsible for the oversight ultimately, and we want to hear if the model is wrong. And that's where we're going to be. I think for the really the remainder of this year as this comes on and as people start to engage it, we're going to continue to see things get more and more refined. But that phase, once that's through and we have a model we can trust, all the next things get way more fun. I don't know how much we can tease on anything else coming, but I did want to reference one other piece of AI that Autoflow does inside of the Bayflow program. And it is worth noting, the AI camera system, the AI component to it is capable of identifying vehicles by year, make, and model without a license plate.
It's also capable of differentiating between a two-post column and a person.
Yes, it can identify a body versus a car as well. Easier than.
We are using AI in civil defense for sure. Yes.
Yep.
And you know, in our model, the data is anonymized, right? So we're not going and selling data to anybody. We're not selling it to each of the shops where nobody knows like what data came from my shops and what data came from Brandon's shops, right? Nobody knows, right? The way that we do this. So, and this goes again to like, you know, we talk, right? Trusting your data, right? Like your data is important. You know, who you give it to and who you share it with and what you do with it is important. Now, companies ethically should do the right thing. Google used to have this, their mantra was do good or be good. I think it was be good. They dropped it a long time ago. And that was kind of sad because I think that over time, like, it's hard to be good.
Don't be evil, right?
Yeah, don't be evil. Be good,
Yeah.
don't be evil. But look, right now, we are good. You know,
right now.
Squish any rumors. We haven't sold any private equity companies. We haven't sold any, you know, we're still independently owned and we're still innovating. We're still pushing the boundaries of innovation in a space where a lot of people are like, no, you can't innovate digital inspections anymore. And we're like, yeah, you can. Yeah, there's still room. We've got other things coming that are pretty awesome. Like we're not going to stop innovating.
I think that's the defining point. Yeah, basic inspection forms are pretty ubiquitous, like a lot of things in shop management systems and other things today. And I think that our continual evolution is the really the important note here is the digital inspection and solutions within that are a key part of our focus and will remain a key part of our focus. And there's so many things that we can do there. I think that that's going to continue to bring a lot of value for our clients. Great. Brandon, any closing remarks you want to add?
No, I think we've talked about this artificial intelligence intelligently.
That's good.
I was trying to pull a Craig pun.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess we'll figure out if that's a pun or not later.
Yeah.
I think it's just the same word used to
probably.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a Craig-ism.
Yeah, that's something I would
more accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, we have. Yeah. Chris, any final remarks following up that, Jem?
I'm just gonna say to all those who are watching this and to our clients and customers, like, thanks for being on this journey with us. I mean, we owe it to the people who trust in us to innovate and from a technology standpoint and a company standpoint, to truly try and bring y'all innovation and make it easier for you to be productive and efficient in your shop. I mean, once again, still shop owners, and I want the same thing from my shops, but we certainly want it for your shops as well. And it's true. I can't say it any other way than, look, this is just one more place that we're trying to, not be like, hey, look at us, cool AI company, but like, hey, here's a great application of something where we could take this new technology, apply it, and really affect some massive change. And so thank you for taking the journey with us, is what I like to say.
That's great. No, and thanks, folks. I realize some of you may have some outstanding questions. Peter, I just saw that last one there about questions on AI and scheduling. Oh boy, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, there's a bunch of ideas on scheduling. But there's more coming. Thanks for paying attention to us here on this topic. I think that I look forward to AI a little more, seeing that we get to do something that reflects our values here as an organization. We don't want to replace people. We don't want to do things that diminishes the role of the people. We want to do things that makes your role more effective so you can have better relationships with your clients and connect them to the information that you have on their vehicle. That's our goal. And I think we'll do a good job supporting you. Thanks so much for joining us. The recording will be live in a few days, and we will make sure that gets to you if you are a registered attendee. We'll go from there. We look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.